Hi, hello everyone. This is Dr. Chiranjeevi Manike, Professor and Head of Data Science and Cyber Security Department, MLR Institute of Technology, Hyderabad. As part of data mining video lecture series, previous lectures we discussed about the two categories of web mining. Now we are going to discuss another category, that is a web usage mining. So what is a web usage mining? So because as we discussed in the previous lecture, like the number of users being used are active users. So what content being generated and how we can use that content, so to improve the business or etc. So discovery of meaningful patterns from the data generated by the client server transactions on one or more web localities. So because if you want to access if you want to browse, or if you want to do any online shopping, or if you want to watch a video that is in the streaming content, so we have to access a particular website, or if you want to perform a purchase, we have to access a e-commerce website. So then as a client, we will send a request to the specific web page that is available in the server, and the server would send the response as if that page is available, and that will be returned back to the client as a response. So these are the different kinds of transactions would happen between the client and server. But here the purpose of this web usage mining is to discover the meaningful patterns from that transactions that is available in the web localities. So the typical sources of data includes automatically generated data stored in the server access logs, like whenever we access a particular page or a website, or whenever we watch a video or anything in the internet, so that the corresponding log information would be recorded in the log files. Like there are different types of logs, like server logs, application logs, etc., and also the client side cookies. Next, the user profiles, and also the metadata, which includes the page attributes, content attributes, usage data, etc. And if you look at the web usage mining process, so we will be having the server log data and also the registration data, etc. And as we discussed the process, the second process, that is first the step process is in web mining is the data collection, and second step is the data cleaning process. So to remove the unwanted stuff, the cleaning be done. Next, clean log files, like suppose if the cleaning is applied to this log file data, then we'll get the cleaned log data. Then transaction identification, like suppose if you want to identify the relevant transaction, or if you want to identify the transaction that done by a particular customer, so that transaction identification would be done. Next, so then that will be the filtered data. So this is going to have the transaction data. Then data integration, because the most of the time the data need to be integrated, or whatever the meaningful insights which are derived, those meaningful insights cannot be derived from the data which is available in internal in the sense internal employee data, the emails sent, the messages communicated, like all these kind of data would be treated as internal data. But most of the time, to derive the meaningful insights or derive the knowledge, actionable knowledge, so we need to rely on the outside external data also. So like suppose most of the time we rely on the social media. So like this, so that's why the multiple sources of data need to be integrated. Like this here you can see, and this is one data, like a server log data. So whenever a client or a user access a particular web page or sends a request to the server, that would be recorded in the server log, and that is the internal data available. And also mostly the registration data also, but sometimes some other data that need to be collected from the external sources. So all these kinds of data need to be integrated here. So then we'll get the data that is integrated from the different sources. So then we can also apply this database query languages. Next, we have to do the transformation, that is formatted data. The data, that is the process like in a data warehouse, extraction, transformation, and loading. So the transformation, some kind of transformations need to be applied so that the data will be converted into the required format. Next, pattern discovery. So because the data is available in the required format, so that we can apply the different pattern discovery methods like what we discussed, association, rule mining, clustering, classification, etc. So then once the patterns are discovered, then the pattern analysis would be done based on like overlap, visualization tools, knowledge query mechanisms, or we can also use the intelligent agents. Next, pre-processing architecture. If you look at like we are not going to discuss in detail about this pre-processing architecture as per because it is not in our scope of the syllabus. So here the raw data that will be used and for the cleaning process, and then user or the session identifications will be identified, and the page view identification, then path completion, and the server session files would be stored in some other form like that. So next one is the log files. As we discussed, the usage information would be analyzed, or the data, the usage data would be recorded in the form of a logs. So logs are the essential components of any IT system, helping you with any all of the following, like mainly to monitor the infrastructure performance, detect application bugs, conduct the root cause analysis, investigate the security incidents, track user behavior, etc. So there are different common formats of logs available. So in this one common format, that is extended common log file, EC LF short format. And this is the format of this ECLF. You can see the different fields in this format. These are the different fields in this format here. Let us see what is the purpose of each field, like IP address, that is of the remote host, and RFC 931 is another field we have, that is a remote login name of the user, and authenticated user, the username as which the user has authenticated himself, and the date and the time of the request, the request line exactly as it can come from the client, and the status, that is HTTP response code returned to the client. Like we send the request, like suppose if you want to access a particular web page from the server, we will send a request in terms of like HTTP, that is hypertext transfer protocol, but send the request to the server. Then if the whatever the content, whatever the web page, whatever the address, in terms of address we are looking for, if it is not available, then the response, if it is available, then that will be written back as a response. If not, then the response code will be, if not then the corresponding code will be returned back to the client. So next, bytes, that is number of bytes are transmitted, that is also used like based on the computer behavior, how the data being transmitted, is there any unusual behavior, abnormal amount of data being transferred, or that will be used for the fraud detection. Like these are the different fields in this extended common log file format, so this will be used. Next, the issues in the data usage data, mainly the session identification, so CGI data, common gateway interface data, the caching. So sometimes we will not always get the data from the server, that sometimes most frequently used data need to be maintained in a temporary storage called as a caching. Next, the dynamic pages, robot detection and filtering, and the transaction identification, that is mainly to identify the unique users, identify the unique user transactions. So what are the session identification problems? Those affect the single IP address or the multi users, the internet service provider, proxy servers, public access machines, the web TV effect, that is called as multiple IP addresses or the single session. So rotating the IP for the load balancing, privacy tools, These are the problems in the session identification. Next, we have some solutions like cookies. These are the small piece of code that is saved on the client machines. Most of the time, when we try to access or when we want to download a content, so that particular website will ask you to configure the cookies. So that is a piece, that is the small piece of code that would be saved at the client machine. Next, a user login requires a user to log in ID with a password and the embedded session IDs and the client side tracking. These are the different solutions for this session identification. Next, a CGI common gateway interface data, that is mainly the method used to pass the variables and the user entered data to the content server. So here the state of the name or the value page that are attached to end of this URI. So you can see what is URI and URL, etc. from this diagram. Next, what are the CGI data problems, common gateway interface problems? Mainly the hidden values. The post request to have a hidden option that removes the name or a value page from the URI. Next, client servers can maintain the state in the form of a session variables. The relevant data for determining what pages was accessed may not be in the current CGI page. So these are the problems with the CGI data. And the solutions we have, like pull the data directly from the HTTF traffic instead of the server logs. So that would be considered as one solution. Next, another solution is to have a content server create an access log, so that the problems occurred with the CGI data would be resolved. But let us look at the advantages also, and also there as well as the disadvantages. So advantages with the first option, that is pull the data directly from the HTTP traffic instead of the server log, is a generic. It works for any web server or the content server configuration. But the disadvantage is the no access to the secure data, no access to the internal content server variables. Next, the second solution is to have content server create access logs. So the advantage with this is all relevant information is available always, and clean log of page views instead of file access is created. So no session ID, first access problems. And whereas a disadvantage with this is content server performance may be degraded, the no automatic like server logs. Next, caching problems. Mainly the clients and the proxy servers save the local copies of pages that have been accessed more frequently. So use of the back and the forward buttons on a browser may access the local copy instead of requesting a new one from the servers. So these are the problems with. So next, the server log incomplete due to the caching. As I said just before, so most frequently used the pages would be stored in a temporary location. So in that time, while accessing that, this problem will occur. Next one is a wrong access timings recorded at servers. The time captured by the server logs and that is by the client's actual viewing times. So here from this you can see here the time captured by the server log, that is a T1, the request the page, and next to send page 1 by the server to the client, that is T3, and then the request page 2, that is T5. Next, missed page views at the servers. So here you can see there are different client and the cache, because the most frequently used pages would be stored in this cache. So there will be a chance of missing pages. So what are the solutions we have? Like a dynamic content greatly reduces the number of cached pages accesses. So advantage is fewer missed page views. Disadvantage, increase the server traffic because the number of pages, dynamic pages content greatly reduces. So negative, that is the expiration dates for the pages force the browsers to request the new versions. That is the negative aspect. Next, robot detection and filtering. The web robots are the software programs that automatically traverse the hyperlink structure of the World Wide Web in order to locate and retrieve the information. So that need to be detected. Next, motivation, that is for distinguishing web robot visits from other users. So sometimes you may observe the same kind of activity, so it would be difficult to identify whether that person is a robot or a user, normal user. So unauthorized gathering of business information at e-commerce websites and consumption of considerable network bandwidth, difficulty in performing the clickstream analysis effectively on the web. So transaction identification is another one. That is main questions like how to identify the unique users, how to identify or define a user transaction that is done by a particular user. And if you look at the problems, like user IDs are often suppressed due to the security concerns. So individual IP addresses are sometimes hidden behind the proxy servers, and the client side of the proxy catching makes the server log data less reliable. So standard solutions or the practices include the user registration, client-side cookies, or cache busting, or the solutions are the best practices. And if you look at the heuristics for the transaction identification, like we identify the user sessions, we use the IP, agent, and OS fields as the key attributes. We will also use the client-side cookies, unique user IDs if available. And like some other information also will be used, like a session timeouts, and we will also use the synchronized refer log entries and the timestamps to expand the user paths, those are belongings to a particular session. Next, what are the associations could be mined in this web transactions? And if you like, as we discussed in the previous lecture, that is association rule mining. So association rule mining, like x if x then y, with alpha confidence and this support. So these x and y are the set of items. So for example, you can see here the 60% of the clients who access the products also access the products software and webminer.html. And 30% of our clients who access the special offer.html placed an online order in the products or software. So there is another actual example that is from IBM's official website, Olympics site. Other patterns from the web transactions, like sequential patterns. For example, 30% of clients visited the product or software had done a search in Yahoo using the keyword software before they visit. So 60% of clients who placed an online order for a web miner placed another online order for software within the 15 days. So these are the sequential patterns would be mined. Next, clustering and classification. Clients who often access product software webminer.html tend to be from the educational institutions. So clients who placed an online order for the software, that tend to be students in the 2025 age group and live in the United States. So based on the demographics also we could identify. Next, 75% of clients who downloaded software from the product software demos visit between the 7 and 11 p.m. on weekends. So these are the insights we could derive. And also the path and the usage pattern discovery, that is types of paths or usage information, that is to find out the most frequent path traversed by the users, entry and exit points, and the distribution of users durations, user attritions, etc. For example, 60% of clients who access this follow the path home, what's new, home products, and home products of file1.html. So Olympic website, so 30% of clients who access the sports specific pages started from the sneak peek page 65% of clients left the site after 4 or less references. So these are all the other path and the usage pattern discoveries. And if you look at the implications of web usage mining for the different businesses like e-commerce, so it is mainly used for determine the life value of our clients. It is used to design the cross marketing strategies across the products, evaluate the promotional campaigns, etc. And we'll also look at other implications, like implications for other applications, like effective and efficient web presence. That is mainly used to determine the best way to structure the website, how best we can structure our website. Next, identify the weak links, that is to eliminate or to make the enhancements. And the site specific web design agent, and the free page the files that are most likely to be accessed. And there are some other intra organization applications also, like to enhance work group management and communication. And that would also evaluate the internet effectiveness and identify the structural needs and requirements. So interestingness measure is another thing, that is whatever the rules or patterns we discover, and we have to measure those, whether those are interesting or not. So a measurement of pattern that are subjectively different from what is expected and above a certain support threshold. So in the World Wide Web, there are two sources of information, like a web structure and the web usage. Whereas the web structure reflects the author's viewpoint of browsing behavior, whereas web usage reflects the user's browsing behavior. So any conflicting evidence from these sources of information would be termed as interesting. Next, user behavior profiles, that is mainly why, that is to understand the complex human decision process and how the record click stream data would be used and gather other user information such as a demographic, etc. And at what level within a website, example like Amazon or all World Wide Web level. So that's it. So thank you for watching this video. So next lecture we will be going to discuss text mining.